You'd be hard-pressed to find someone who likes video games, but has never enjoyed a Nintendo game. Despite their enviable track record, Nintendo doesn't get it right all the time. There are a million reasons why players might not be satisfied with a game, but one big one is pacing. Sometimes their games are just way too long, and others it's way too short and the gamers want more. Before we get started, make sure to click that subscribe button to join our notification squad and give this video a big thumbs up. Okay, let's dive in. Too long, Super Paper Mario. Super Paper Mario is a side-scrolling game from 2007, released on the Wii. It was the third installment in the franchise. The Paper Mario series began as the successor to the SNES's Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars, and has always been known for its in-depth storytelling. Entries in the series were long, but they justified their length. Games like the original Paper Mario and its sequel, The Thousand-Year Door, were RPGs in the classic sense, supporting their slower pace with detailed world-building and accomplished characterization. That changed with Wii's Super Paper Mario, where the series pivoted towards platforming gameplay without fully adapting the game's length to fit. Super Paper Mario has a cool 2D/3D switching gimmick that allowed designers to cleverly hide secrets and alternate paths within each level. But there are a few too many of those levels to hold interest. What type of gamers will love this? Those who like sitting through long, overdrawn explanations during cutscenes. The characters ramble on and ruin the game. Who will like it? Well, those who can get past the rambling and love awesome gameplay. The player explores various landscapes, constantly fights enemies, and you get to solve puzzles. Too short, Luigi's Mansion. On September 14th, 2001, Japan released the Nintendo Gamecube and 3 titles: Super Monkey Ball Wave Race, Blue Storm, and Luigi's Mansion. Yep, Luigi took center stage in a radically different kind of setting. The game featured brand new gameplay mechanics and characters. The levels were awesome too. There was just so much to like about Luigi's Mansion, from its silly, spooky atmosphere to the cowardly charisma of its star character. Sadly, despite the fun it provides, the game itself is only a few hours of action. Once you beat it, there's not much else to do. It takes place in a single location, and once you get used to its mechanics and rhythm, it doesn't put up much of a challenge. The game sold over 2.5 million copies and is the 5th best-selling Nintendo GameCube in the United States. If this game was not enough, there is a sequel entitled Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon for the DS. Too long, Star Fox Adventures. Star Fox Adventures is the most maligned entry in the storied Star Fox series, but we rather like this game. Even though many of the series' ongoing identity problems started with this installment, it's still very pretty to look at over a decade later. The Zelda-like mechanics and structures implemented are still pretty solid. If the game hadn't been retooled late in the development to include the established Star Fox characters, it might have been pretty classic. All of this coupled together created a heavily bloated game. Yes, the environments are lovely, and there is some fun puzzle solving, but it's mainly one long fetch quest sprinkled with annoying quick-time elements and an irritating sidekick to boot. The game was still received very well, being the fastest-selling GameCube game at the time of release. It was designated as a player's choice. If it were a few hours shorter, it would have been the best-selling game ever on GameCube, hands down. Too short, Yoshi's Story. While the Nintendo 64 is beloved today for its innovative controller and pioneering games, it did not always garner much support among third-party developers. This forced Nintendo to release games that weren't always perfect. Yoshi's Story, which was released December 1997, was one such unfortunate case. The main fault of the game, you ask? It was unforgivably short. It had only a few levels which could be solved in a weekend with a difficult setting on. However, the difficulty setting was extremely low. This meant that the game was easily beaten within a day, and time to spare to start a new game. However, this N64 sequel to the SNES classic Yoshi's Island did contribute some great music and gorgeous graphical style to the platform. It incorporated a craft-influenced aesthetic long before games like Kirby's Epic Yarn would earn acclaim for doing something similar. The side-scrolling gameplay was fun and exciting. It was puzzle-oriented, which helped to keep you amped in the game from the minute you began to the moment it was over. With a low difficulty setting, this meant that replaying the game was out of the picture, unless your favorite day of the year is Groundhog's Day. Too long, The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. Most modern Zelda games suffer from gameplay bloating. Anyone out there remember Wind Waker's momentum-killing Triforce quest? You didn't think it'd be able to get any longer, did you? That was until Twilight Princess was released on the GameCube in November of 2006. The game's length had it worse than any other entry. Originally, the game was to be released November 2005, but developers put it on hold to refine the game. We're pretty sure they felt the game was too short and needed to add a few more levels. The game has, however, earned plenty of devotees for all of its challenging dungeons, oddball characters, and diverse array of items. But the Hyrule of Twilight Princess is big for the sake of being big. Unlike the seamless overworlds of Windwalker or Ocarina of Time, this iteration of Hyrule Field is split into discrete sections without much interest outside towns and dungeons. Even worse, the game takes an unforgivably long time to start moving at the beginning. It contains over an hour of tutorials and plot setup separating players from the first dungeon. Twilight Princess aims to be a Lord of the Rings style ep but ends up feeling undercooked. Too short, Elite Beat Agents. The DS was secretly one of Nintendo's most experimental platforms. It contained a deep library of silly and innovative games. They were looking to try out new techniques, refine others, and just see what they could get away with. One of those titles was Elite Beat Agents. It was a goofy rhythm game that worked like a cross between Parappa the Rapper and Dance Dance Revolution. The game is classified as a music video game, but is so much more. It's a blast to play. With less than 20 stages in total, it doesn't offer much for a dedicated player to dive into. The song selection is also extremely uneven, especially when its main pull is music. For dedicated gamers, playing at a higher difficulty level extends the game's length, but only just a little bit. There's not much to go back to after those are done. Overall, the game was highly received by critics and fans, but sales were ridiculously low, which was a huge factor for never being released globally. Perhaps the game was just a victim of its mid-2000s release. If it had been around during the downloadable content era, new songs would have worked wonders for Elite Beat Agents. Too long, Mario Party. Mario Party is eternally popular with over a dozen entries in the series. This doesn't even include its handheld spin-offs. It falls in the party video game series where 4 players can compete together and even up to 8 players. The series even currently holds a world record for being the longest running mini-game series. Worldwide, sales for the entire Mario Party series are staggering with over 39 million copies sold. Since each game is designed to work by itself like a board game, its inclusion on this list may seem a little strange. But have you ever tried to play a game of Mario Party in less than an hour? Did it work? We didn't think so. A single game of Mario Party takes ages to play, as character animations and random board events add so much time to what should be a compact experience. Its stretched out pace tends to suck all the fun out of it. The mini-games, which are the real centerpiece of the Mario Party, are fun enough to play, but the game is only designed for long sessions and gets boring long before all the players cross the finish line. What do you think? Too short, Pokemon Snap. Pokemon Snap is a really fun and quirky game. It is a first-person rail shooter and simulation game. It was first released in Japan and North America in 1999 and globally in 2000. This was one of the first Pokemon-based console games. The graphics were ahead of its time, as it was the first time Pokemon was rendered in real-time 3D. Snap emphasized zoological aspects in which players were able to photograph creatures in the wild. Exploration is limited to on-rail courses. However, players can interact with wild Pokemon by throwing items to trigger special moves or alternate paths. This design has a downside. It makes the game extremely linear and very short. There are only 7 levels, and though the game requires you to go back and redo earlier courses to unlock new ones, it doesn't fix the brevity of the gameplay. Despite the fun central mechanics and the novelty of seeing Pokemon in their natural habitat, there's just not a lot of game in Pokemon Snap. The game had a strong fan following, due largely to the marketing behind it. Nintendo promoted it heavily and had it featured in more than 86,000 hotels and contests to send winners to foreign lands. If only the gameplay had been longer and kept the player engaged, it would have launched into being a top seller globally. Too long, Bravely Default. Bravely Default was originally published by Square Enix, but Nintendo handled the publishing duties for the 3DS RPG when it hit Western markets. It was widely praised as a throwback to classic RPG gameplay with an innovative strategic combat system. The beautiful art style drew on classic Final Fantasy imagery, but that's no surprise, as the game was originally conceived as a spiritual successor to the DS's Final Fantasy, The Four Heroes of Light. The gameplay is phenomenal, with some projects taking days to weeks to complete. The mechanics and controls are smooth and well crafted. The boss battles are epic as well, leaving you feeling challenged in just the perfect amount of difficulty. But while it's a very good game, it falls short of greatness due to a late game twist that forces players to fight through all of its bosses again, for reasons that are less than justified. It's an artificial difficulty spike that needlessly lengthened an already long game. Fans and critics were split on their reviews. Some loved the longer gameplay, but yet others were so annoyed that they purposely destroyed the game in unique ways. Either way, for us, we would prefer a natural spike in difficulty versus artificially increasing the difficulty. What do you think? Too short. Wario World. A relatively unknown GameCube platform, Wario World tasks players with recovering Wario's stolen gold by suplexing animals and platforming through various levels. The game was developed by the legendary Japanese studio Treasure, who were responsible for games like Gunstar Heroes and Ikaruga. Wario's unique personality infuses the game with a stinky charm. It was first released globally in 2003 and was an instant success. It was critically acclaimed and the players who played it loved it. The game was even re-released as a player's choice title. The biggest issues though for the critics and fans was its short length. There's a lot of fun to be had though. Pile-driving enemies and collecting precious gems. Wario World puts up a real challenge from time to time. The game's plot centers around Wario and his quest to regain his treasure and castle. The game surely lives up to developer Treasure's pedigree for creative, ingenious game developing, but the game is strictly linear and has only 4 worlds with 2 levels each. It's hard to be impressed when you can sit down and play it from start to finish in an afternoon. If all games were this short, you would only need half-day game rentals. Do you agree with the games that are too long or too short? Do you wish some of these had been reversed? What other games have you played that you wish had been on this list? Let us know in the comments section below. Also, don't forget to share this video and give us a big thumbs up. If you haven't already, click that subscribe button so you can watch more videos from our playlist. Thanks for watching. Until next time.